All right, welcome to a little demo here about mixing up some paints. I'm going to start with the acrylic. I got the cheapest acrylics that I have here just to try to maybe you all do too. I kind of find that sometimes students have some really cheap acrylic paints, Reeves, and it really is one of those things where you get what you pay for. Sometimes the viscosity or things will break up a little funky. So I also don't even have the colors that you have for our class, which would be the alizarin crimson and the ultramarine blue. I'm just working with cyan blue and this kind of magenta, which is kind of like an opaque version of alizarin crimson. And then this yellow here. So I'm just going to try to get the most neutral color. It won't probably be black at all. It'll probably be just a dark, dark gray maybe, if I'm lucky, a dark gray. But I'm just going to mix up, and again with acrylics you just want to be using your brush as much as possible. So because the palette knife will spread it all out pretty thin, and then you won't have any, it will dry quicker than you want it to. Right now I'm mixing up a little bit of this green and this blue and yellow together, and I'm getting a kind of a, not really a dark green at all. And to anytime you want to desaturate or get something muted to a less of a saturated, and you want to mix in the complement. In this case, it would be this magenta for us. And then you'll see that really that'll just kind of create this really dark gray. And it's kind of hard to see from where you're looking at. It might even seem kind of bluish. So I'll just add a little bit more of this magenta. The next thing I really wanted to kind of talk about was how it's going to spread onto the canvas. So right now I'm going to just make this side the acrylic side, and I'll put a nice opaque brush stroke on there. And you can see that it does have a tint of a bluish tone to it, but that's, you're just going to go with as well as you can. You get a little bit more of that yellow and mix it in there, and then a little bit more of that. When it's blue, orange is going to be the complement, so you mix that red and that yellow together a little bit more and try to find, again, you're just really looking for the least amount of color when you're doing this. So if you don't have black, this is pretty much what your grisaille study is going to be looking like. Now I'm going to get a really thinned out, because I told you that if you want to get lighter tones and whatnot, you dilute your paint a little bit more and get a little more thinned out wash. But when you paint that on there, it'll be a little harder to see how it doesn't really want to always, you'll see that these little white spots kind of come through on your canvas, and it doesn't really come through as much. So just kind of moving it around and really working it in there is going to be the key, and that'll give you those kind of lighter values. Again, with painting and acrylics, you will need paper, your rags handy, but once it's on there, it's not going to really come up as easy once it dries. You're going to need to wipe away things right away, so it's good to have stuff handy in case you realize, oh, that got too dark. I need to get a little darker. And the trick will also be is covering everything, getting that same muted value every time, because I do want this to be as much of a grisaille study, meaning a black and white grayscale. So with your mixing up all of these different paints to get your kind of desaturated value, the one thing, even if you don't get it to be completely gray, completely black, I would say try to get consistency in that muted tone, and that's something that I'll be looking for more than if it's black or gray, is if you got a really good consistent desaturated tone. So again, you can see the different brush strokes. Right when you brush it on, there's this kind of resistance that happens. That can be useful sometimes. So I want you to, again, treat the first application of your painting like a rough sketch. Just forming the compositions of things. And then, you know, go ahead and have that white handy in case things aren't the way you like them. With acrylics, just let it dry a little bit and then go back over the areas of white that you want to make sure that have white areas or lighter values, and then you can kind of go back and address those darker values or the more subtle grays and whatnot. So this is the first part for the acrylic. And you know, the other thing I could suggest, I'm mixing it out on this palette so you can see what the mixture looks like, but these little Tupperware containers are going to be really good for you to store some of those paints in, so you can put the lid on there and try to keep it as moist and workable as long as possible. All right, so I'm going to stop this one and I'll start another one that shows the same process on the other side with oil.